Hi, I'm Mike Hendrickson, live from Strata, London, 2012. I'm here with Mikel Bisgaard-Bohr from Teradata. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
So can you give us a little idea about what you do at Teradata?
Yeah, so my role is I'm the VP for Marketing and Business Development in Europe, which means I'm responsible for all our marketing investments, and then I'm responsible for kind of the long-term growth strategy of the company in Europe.
Okay, and so Teradata, you and I were talking, they've been around for a long time. I'm not sure everyone knows that. So can you give us a little background in what Teradata does in the big data space?
Yeah, so we like to think of ourselves as the original big data company. Teradata was founded in 1979 and has been dedicated to analytics ever since. When big data as a phenomenon started to come up a few years ago, we also went into the area of non-relational data. We partnered with various Hadoop vendors, and we recently acquired Aster Data, which is a key player in the big data space. So we see ourselves as kind of the leading infrastructure provider in the data space, whether it be traditional big data, lots of relational data, or the new kinds of data, the unstructured data that is emerging now.
So you've evolved from the old days when mainframes had backup tapes to today's data where a lot of it's in the cloud or hybrid cloud and local and those.
Yes.
Yeah.
So originally when Teradata came to life in 1979, it was proprietary hardware, proprietary software, and a proprietary database. Since then, we've evolved with the original Teradata product to virtualize the whole thing. So it now runs on standard Intel commodity hardware. There's a few proprietary components in the interconnect between different nodes. And later on, we subsequently started buying into stuff like Aster to cater for this unstructured data, which obviously doesn't fit very well in a relational database.
So talk to us a little bit about Aster Data. I know the acquisition was a year or two ago. Mm-hmm. What is their play? And now your play.
So Aster basically is kind of a hybrid between a Hadoop world and a traditional relational world. So we acquired Aster because Aster had some very unique IP that essentially makes Hadoop easier to play with. So Hadoop means you have to code everything from the beginning, whereas Aster has a kind of what they call SQL MR, SQL MapReduce. So you can write SQL-like statements to the database, and it will then get translated into MapReduce code. So it makes it easier to integrate MapReduce into the enterprise of a large organization.
So it fits in with your total offerings from Teradata?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So you gave a talk today on big data, a big deal?
Yes.
And the question mark after a big deal. So I think everyone at this conference would think it is a big deal, but what is the question mark on that big deal?
So I think the question mark is two different things. One is there is so much hype around big data at the moment, so it was almost to provoke a little bit to get people to think. So to be clear, I think big data as a concept is a very big deal and has huge implications for how you run any organization, be it a for-profit, a non-profit, or public. But I also believe that there is almost too much focus on the data. So we hear everyday stories about unstructured data, video, and how you can analyze all these kind of new data types that are coming out. And obviously, that is of huge interest, and in particular at a conference like this, where you have a number of data scientists who, by the very nature of what they do, are very, very focused on the data. But I come at it from a business angle, and if I was a business person wanting to invest in big data technology for my company, I also want to understand what exactly does this do for me, and that's kind of why the question mark was there.
So kind of predictive big data?
Well, in a way, you could say that, yes.
Yeah, so where do you see Teradata going in the big data space in the future?
It's interesting. A few years ago, I sat in my office and I was a little bit pessimistic about the whole thing, because you could almost predict how much data there was in a given industry. I was very active in retail at the time, and I was kind of thinking, okay, how are we going to grow 10 years down the line? But I think in the last 5 years, we've evolved from a situation where you had data scarcity. The organization's ability to get hold of data that they could use for analytics was limited simply because it was so expensive to acquire data for analytics. To now we're in a situation of data abundance. Everything is becoming intelligent, which means that the streams of data you can collect are huge. And so the growth opportunity for us is, I wouldn't say unlimited, but it's significant. So we're very comfortable. What has changed now is most of the growth obviously comes in this area of unstructured data. And this is also an area where most people have lots of ideas, but very few people have practical experience. So we're investing both on the technology side, how do you reconcile within a large organization the relational data and the need for a robust and stable environment that can produce reports and BI to thousands of users without a glitch, to the more kind of investigative environment where you try to figure out what are the underlying big trends that impact your business.
So last question for you. I'm curious about this one. When you look at the whole big data space and you look at all the data scientists that were out here today, what do you think the biggest opportunity is with big data? Where do you think, if you had 10 data scientists, what would you deploy them on?
From a functional perspective?
From a world-solving problem or any sort of solution that you're looking, someone wants to build a company or they want to cure cancer. What do you think the biggest opportunity for data science in the big data space is?
I believe the biggest opportunity from a holistic perspective across everything is science and government. But science is probably the most obvious one because science are by nature very analytical minded, but they're very data scarce. I mean, they have data, but it's mostly research papers. And what we see now is a lot of the instruments that they use for experiments are converted from analog, which basically meant the only data you could get out was paper, to digital. So we're working with one university here in Europe around a genomics project. So basically he's using gene sequencing machines, and these machines are now completely transforming the way you do research on how proteins impact illness and medicine, and how medicine actually works inside the body. And this is only possible because now you get all of the data electronically. So I think this will be a huge thing. Same thing with scientific as in oil and gas. So again, data intensive, but most of the data is analog. And this will go digital in the next 5 to 10 years, and this will completely transform not only how we explore energy, but also how much utilization we get out of the energy fields that we have. I think government is probably a bigger opportunity. You look at how relatively inefficient government allocation of funds is, and if you could get more transparency, think about the public transportation. Today, when most cities they do public transportation, they basically make a tender to a third party who then organizes the buses, etc. But the kind of data that they can provide is very aggregated. We know every day a couple of million people uses the buses in London, which is a good number. But if you really want to understand how should I construct a service level agreement, you want to know how many people are waiting for bus number 303 outside the Landmark Hotel at 8 o'clock on a Monday in September versus at 10 o'clock on the same Monday versus 8 o'clock in April. And big data gives you the opportunity for some of that. So actually we could get much more infrastructure for the same money, or we could save substantial amounts of money just by being better at allocating funds.
And that's globally too.
That's globally.
All the governments could use this. Yes.
And I also think it would be good for government because it would make it more transparent. I think a big reason people gripe about government efficiency, about taxes, is also because it's hard for people to understand how is the money being spent. The data is out there, but it's not really sort of made easy to get to.
Yeah, so what do you think the biggest barrier is? I said that was my last question, but in government, I'm particularly interested in this. Is the barrier money, or is it expertise, or combinations,
I think money is a barrier in private enterprise because the threshold for getting an investment approved is probably quite high. So businesses in general, with a few exceptions, you have the visionary people like Walmart, which I spoke about in my presentation, who very early on saw that this idea of gathering large data sets and optimize the business and outcompete your competitors, but that was really an outlier. And you have those outliers in every industry, the visionary guy that takes a chance and leapfrogs the whole industry. But generally speaking, business people want to see a business case. What is the strategy? So what is the logic behind the investment? And then they want to see some numbers. I think government also wants to see numbers, but the appropriation mechanism is slightly different. I think the big issue in government is two things. It's skills, because it's hard for governments, generally speaking, to attract the most skilled people because they don't pay the same as private enterprise. And the other thing is, citizens, generally speaking, are, I wouldn't say wary, but they are a bit concerned that the government knows too much. So this whole sort of big brother scare. And by making it more transparent and putting it into sort of a more robust legal framework, what can the government do with the data and who gives them permission to do certain things would go a long way to alleviating those kind of concerns.
Excellent. Michael, I hope we see you at future Stratas and other O'Reilly events.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.